Hi, I'm Li Xueying, and welcome to Asian Insider. In this episode, the Straits Times Taiwan correspondent Yip Yi explains why the wealthy East Asian city can look so ugly. Welcome back to Singapore, Yi.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's so nice to be in conversation face-to-face, right? Usually we're always mediated through the screen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great to have you back in the studio. So for those who don't know, Yi is our Taiwan correspondent of about 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? That's right. So she's back in Singapore this week for a newsroom retreat. So it's really a treat to have you here as well and to talk about your latest letter from the Bureau. So tell us a bit more about that. So much to talk about for Taiwan, but this was a story that really had traction with many of our readers. It is something that many Taiwanese and foreigners alike blame for making Taiwan ugly. So tell us a bit more about that.
So this story really came about from a personal, just a pet peeve of mine that I didn't really understand why the buildings in Taipei were just, pretty ugly. And especially when I think I'm so used to, in Singapore, we're very privileged to have buildings that are constantly painted over and, it just looks very fresh and new. And there was something about Taipei that really struck me that it felt stuck in the 80s or 90s. And when I asked Taiwanese about it, like, why are the buildings, why do they look so old? Some of the answers I got were just not satisfying at all. And some of them were saying stuff like, it's because it rains here all the time, so we don't bother painting it over. And I was like, that's not a thing, because in Singapore it rains a lot.
That's right.
So, but one particular thing that I didn't really appreciate, I think, were these metal window bars that a lot of old Taiwan homes have on their windows. And because it really gives it a feeling of, it just feels very claustrophobic, and they're rusty and they're old, and honestly, they are safety hazards. So when I was posted to Taipei and looking for an apartment, some of the places I saw had these window bars outside. And I actually would ask the landlord, can I get rid of them? Yeah.
Yes.
Like, would it be okay to cut them away? But they were like, no, it's just something we've had.
Okay. Why was that something that struck you? Because I'm also thinking through, having lived in Singapore and Hong Kong as well, that many of the high-rise apartments do have metal bars, right? Or grills of some sort, essentially as a safety feature to prevent accidental falls.
Yeah.
So what is different about Taiwan's window grills or bars that makes them look so like an eyesore?
I think because it kind of makes sense in Hong Kong. I think if it's a very high, a tall building and you have it on the 50th floor, I totally understand that. But in Taiwan, there's so many low-rise buildings that also have it. And I just didn't really understand what they were there for. And they're used for, in the end, they're not just protecting the people inside or people outside from coming in, but it's truly, people have been using it to store random things. And it's just really messy. And so...
Right. So the issue is not so much that there are metal bars, but the fact that they look very haphazard.
Yes.
Very old, very rusty, as you said.
Yes.
But there
are a lot of illegal additions as well. So some of them are not approved, right? So it just looks very messy and
Okay. So what you were saying, they hang things on these bars? What are these things?
So clothes, for example. So
I can see how that can be handy.
Exactly. I guess that makes sense. But definitely the one outside my old apartment, every day I look across to the other building and they have like step ladders and they have just all sorts of random things. And that is extra storage space, I guess.
Well, I think in your story you wrote about laundry, right? That's being, after ironing, they would just hang them up on those bars, or maybe just used for sunning.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
Okay. So, and obviously there are no rules or regulations about this, right?
I think actually, if you look at it closely, there are technically rules and you're supposed to follow. And I think the new condos, they don't allow it.
Right.
So it does depend on your what's allowed for the condos. But these are a lot of the ones that have been left. They've been there since like the 50s or the 60s and 70s. So they just look very, very old and rusty. And
Okay. Well, on the flip side, you did write about how some of them look quite beautiful. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so that was a really nice surprise. So this came about because I had stumbled upon this Facebook page by these designers, and they went around Taiwan, and they live in the south, so they live in Kaohsiung, and they went around Taiwan looking for old houses, and one of the features of these old houses are these window bars, and they were telling this, stories of how actually a lot of the old ones had designs in them that the homeowners really wanted. So it kind of told a personal story of those families, and which was really nice. There was one family, the Huangs, who when they went to Paris, they loved it so much that they came back and they actually made like a Arc de Triomphe design into the window bars, it's to commemorate their Paris holiday.
Right.
And I thought that was really sweet. And so some of the older ones have like flowers and fish to symbolize, good, like
bountiful.
Yeah. So I thought that was nice, and I never noticed that. But after I started seeing these pictures and I met these designers, now I can't help but look. I will just be like, oh, actually, behind the rust, there's this like very pretty plum blossom design or something. Yeah, and I have to say I never noticed that before.
I guess these are also like personal canvases, right, for these families, right, to put the imprints on
exactly,
or
for a period of time for the metal workers. So a lot of times they were actually given free rein to design whatever they wanted.
Right.
And that's where, they created art, I guess, in these windows.
So you said that technically there are rules and regulations about these things. So what exactly is the landscape for how much play individual households could have in terms of designing their own window grills that are facing the public spaces?
Right. I think actually, I don't know which year this was, but they started realizing that these are quite big safety hazards.
Right.
So I believe now if you want to install new ones, you have to have certain, you have to be able to open it, for example, or unlock it.
Right.
And not
although
just
if there's
trapped.
a fire, it's going to be quite difficult to find the key, right? And to just unlock it.
Yes, true. But at least be able to open it, I think. It can't just trap you in.
Yeah.
So I do think there's some of these rules, but I don't know about Taipei. There's so many illegal additions, and, a lot of people live on, like, the roofs of buildings, and they're not supposed to. It's just they're obviously illegally built. And Taipei tried to crack down on them, but I still see them everywhere.
So how has Taipei tried to crack down on these illegal structures?
Yes, remove them completely and force people to move to other buildings, like newer buildings. But urban redevelopment has been really difficult because Taiwan is very democratic, so they have to have a lot of buy-in from many homeowners, and things can get discussed for years and years and years. And people were telling me that it's also because every time the government changes to a different administration, some things get put behind priority. So some things just never, especially in terms of construction and redevelopment, things just get pushed, and which is why I think Taipei still looks so old. Much of Taipei anyway.
Right. Although, of course, I think that in many Asian cities, we do have this debate going on, right? The trade-off between urban development and renewal, as well as heritage conservation. And like you said, the will of the people in wanting to have things change or not. So in terms of where Taiwan is today in this conversation, how do you see this progressing going ahead?
I think they really need to, so lawmakers have been really trying to talk about it much more because it also has to do with the aging population. So this year in 2025, Taiwan became super aged officially, which means 20% of the population is 65 or older. And a lot of these old buildings don't have elevators, for example, inside. It's just walk-up apartments. And they're... it's a good thing that they're quite earthquake friendly because of the big earthquake, and they've
That's really built into many things already.
So I think now they're trying to do that in terms of for elderly people. So make it easier and build ramps for them, for example, on the stairs. And I think that's people will try to push harder for that as there's more demand for just safer buildings for the elderly as well.
Okay, so it sounds like the factors are converging in trying to redevelop and renew these old buildings, right?
Yeah.
But what about in terms of the tearing down of buildings? Is it hard for governments, the state governments in Taiwan to say we want a certain neighborhood, bulldozed and redeveloped, or is there a lot of pushback against such?
Constantly. There's a lot of pushback. So one of the things, for example, is the Taipei Dome, which opened, I think, only 2 years ago.
Okay.
It's a huge stadium, kind of like the National Stadium here. And that took, I think, 30 years to build because every few years there are protests where even a single tree, they don't want to, the environmentalists will say, we can't remove this very special tree.
Yes.
And things like that. So it's actually very hard, I think, for the government to just step in and say, this is our decision and you have no choice. There's constant debate going on and constant protests. And I think it's been slow, really slow, actually.
Right. And in the success cases, how do the governments do it? For instance, is it through parliament? Is it through the courts? You know, do they actually take these house owners to courts, for instance, to say, look, we do have the legal standing to have you remove or have you evacuate and we have to redevelop this place?
Okay. I have to say I'm not too sure about the courts part, but definitely I see it being debated in parliament all the time. And I think there's also a lot of power in neighborhood, like small, your neighborhood chief, for example, who then feed it up to your municipal government and then the central government. And I think, so there's that kind of conversation, but I'm not too sure about the courts part.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So what other debates is Taiwan going through nowadays?
What other debates? Oh, so many.
In terms of, I think, urban planning, urban infrastructure.
I think the roads is a big thing. So for pedestrians, it's quite hard to walk around much of Taipei. But I have already noticed that in the 3 years I've been there, it's so much better than the first year I was there. There are some roads where they've tried to widen for pedestrians to go on. And even though they're not actual walkways, it's more, at least they marked out a section. And I do think there is some improvement there. And because there have been really huge protests, actually, when it comes to pedestrian safety. So there's a bit of that.
For the development of pavements, right?
Yes.
Protests
for
in favor
to,
of redeveloping the roads so that
yes,
pedestrians' rights are respected.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do find Taipei to be eminently a very walkable city compared to some of the other Asian cities that we have. What about cycling? I mean, one thing that Singaporeans look to Taiwan for is really how it has become such a cyclist-friendly city.
Yes.
Was that also an issue which took a lot of debate before Taiwan got to its current status?
Yeah, I think so. But also I think it's not just Taipei. What I love about Taiwan is how for cyclists is that they make it so easy for you to cycle around the whole island.
Indeed.
And there's actual, there's some trains, for example, where you can put your bike on and there's specific itineraries for cyclists that want to do the round island trip. So I think that's really nice. And I think there's so much interest in trying to be healthier and active aging and all these things. So, and they really do encourage you to use their shared bike system.
Yes.
And it's very, very cheap. And the first certain cards, certain passes you have, it's actually free. So it's great. And now the most amazing thing is the shared bikes, there's e-bikes too.
Yes.
So you can go like uphill and
wow,
it's great.
Now I know how you can, get out of exercising even when cycling.
Yes, definitely. For uphill, it's good.
Yes. So, when it comes to cyclist lanes, one debate that we often have here in Singapore is this competition, right? Essentially for space between motorists, cyclists, as well as pedestrians.
Yeah.
So I'm actually curious to know, how did Taiwan manage to land on this really nice landing point where the cyclists get their own lanes and the motorists seem fine with that, and the pavements are also well
I think that's only in very certain parts, though.
Of Taipei.
Yes. There's so many other parts that there's no pedestrian like areas at all.
Right.
And definitely no cycling lanes. I think that's really specific, that where the cycling routes are. If you go to a lot of the main roads, there are no cycling lanes.
Yes.
And motorists. So I remember I did a story related to pedestrian safety, and one of the professors were saying that Taiwan developed the roads for car owners.
Yes.
And because
that sounds familiar too.
Yes, exactly. But they are wealthier and they just, they're louder. So it was never meant for anybody else until much later. So I think it's slowly developing because there's been so many deaths recently,
right?
In the past few years. And with the buses as well, turning around the corner without stopping at all.
Right.
So, in Taiwan, they don't stop at the pedestrian. Like, they don't stop in front of the cars don't stop. And so I think as more people are angry about all these deaths and injuries, I think that's when people will pay more attention to it.
Okay. So coming back to our original topic of the Tietuans
Yes.
or the iron window bars, I was curious. So in the end, when you were looking about for your first apartment, what did you stay in an apartment with the iron grills?
No, I didn't.
No, you didn't.
I just couldn't.
Or you couldn't compel yourself to do it.
I just couldn't. I felt I work from home, so
Right.
I really didn't want to feel trapped even more. Like I
Right.
wanted that open space and be able to open the windows or have the luxury of having a balcony. I don't have a balcony right now, but I can open my windows, and I would prefer that. Yeah.
Okay, but for the high-rise apartments, what kind of safety measures do they have to prevent accidental falls?
I think some people do have those invisible type grills,
Right.
which they haven't seen too.
Okay.
Yeah, then it's less of an eyesore, I guess.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And today you are still staying in a grillless
Definitely.
apartment.
Still grillless.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Wai, and for
you.
sharing with us your experience.
Sure. Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap for Asian Insider. If you would like to read our column, we have a link in our podcast show notes. You can also sign up for our Asian Insider newsletter. This episode was produced and edited by Faiza Sunny. Thanks for joining us.